so there's two ways of doing a land acknowledgement. And I'm going to give some background. I know you didn't ask me to do that, but I think there's like a lot of misconception and misunderstanding and people not sure what to do. So when we acknowledge the land, you can acknowledge it as a settler or as somebody who's not Indigenous to Canada, even if you are a Canadian, or you can acknowledge it through the eyes of as an Indigenous person, wherever you feel you come from as an Indigenous person. And so, oh, the Thunderbirds are blinking out there. So when we're acknowledging it from that settler position, you're acknowledging that this land is the ancestral territory of Indigenous peoples for centuries prior to colonization. We're acknowledging that there was a lot of tribulation. There was the residential schools, there was the 60s scoop, which I was part of. There was mass assimilation, but there was also lots of camaraderie. And even in this area here, the little bit of history that I'm just learning about this area of how various First Nation groups worked with either the British or the French and helped in those battles to establish boundaries. And that's important because those are big contributions that made Canada what it is today. And you don't hear too much about that. So when we're doing a land acknowledgement from that settler perspective, from that eye set, so thinking two eyes here, we're trying to like really understand, you should always walk in like, what territory am I in? Who are the original people here? And what's the history behind it? And that way you're acknowledging the land in that sense, if that makes sense. So I did not know that coming in, and they asked me to do this. So my homework is then, if I'm being asked to acknowledge the land, I need to know who was here. Whose land is this? So I have learned in the 20 minutes that I've been here that this land was first landed on, or encompassed, what's the word I'm looking for? Lived on, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat Huron, and the Haudenosaunee, and that it is the part of the traditional hunting grounds of the Tendagnog Mohawk people, and the original name, and I cannot pronounce this is not an Anishinaabe, so I apologize, but translates as Long Island Standing. So that is my settler acknowledgement. And I also want to acknowledge as a settler that we have had many contributions of First Nation people, which I sort of alluded to, but not just in battle, but also in medicine, also in helping with the fur trade, also in establishing grounds for people and helping in building territory. So I want to acknowledge all of that. I also want to acknowledge that we've had a very difficult history and that now we're moving into truth and reconciliation. So with truth and reconciliation, and for those of you who are not from Canada and just kind of here and just jumping into this, I apologize for all the politics, but it is part of the Canadian history and what we are and who we are and what we're becoming and where we need to go. And so with truth and reconciliation, I don't think it's truth and reconciliation, it is truth then reconciliation. You cannot reconcile what you do not acknowledge. So we need to acknowledge the truths of our histories. Many of that are terrible truths. But not only do we have terrible truths, I'm part of the 60s group. I was pulled off reserve and put into foster care and adopted into a white family and not able to speak or know or discuss or contact my biological family until an adult. Which is why I didn't know Dorothy until recently. I didn't know I had cousins and uncles and aunts. I didn't know them, but now I do and I feel blessed for that. But in addition to our terrible traumatic history, we have brilliance. We have amazing people, historically, present, and in the future. We have people doing groundbreaking work within our culture, for our culture, and for our nation. So I want to not just acknowledge the truth, the traumatic truths and the awful truths of our histories, our current situation, and hopefully not the future, but potentially. I also want to acknowledge the brilliance of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. I want to acknowledge all of the elders that have been here, are here, and will be here to help guide us and move us in the right direction towards reconciliation. So that's my settler land acknowledgement. Now I'll move into an Indigenous land acknowledgement. And if you're asking somebody to do a land acknowledgement, you probably should be asking somebody who is not Indigenous. Most people don't know that, we're just learning, right? Because it's that acknowledgement too, that historical context that needs to be acknowledged before we move forward. When an Indigenous person is asked to acknowledge the land, we acknowledge it very different. When I get up in the morning, I take my dogs for a walk. I live in the bush, nothing like this. I literally live in the bush. And there are little trails and streams and a river and the boreal forest, and we have lynx and moose and deer and all that other stuff wandering through our property. And when I walk, we have a natural spring that bubbles up in the middle of our property. We live on 120 acres of bush. And so you find your way through and there's a stream. And you can drink from that stream. And I call that one of the belly buttons of Mother Earth, sprouting water for us to drink. And I can drink in confidence from that water, knowing I will not get hurt from that water. Coming right from the belly button. It is not polluted. It is sacred. It gives us life. It gives the animals life. It gives every living being on the face of this planet life. It is the blood in which we all need. And as women, the indigenous culture, at least in Anishinaabe culture, we believe that women are the caretakers of water. So we need to protect it and we need to fight for it. And so I fight for the water. And every morning I go out and I take that little sip and I thank that water for being here. And I thank that water for giving me life, for cleansing me, and allowing me to reside on the land that I live. I do not own that property. We think we do. We've paid somebody for it, but nobody can own property. That is Mother Earth's land, and I'm allowed to live there, and I'm allowed to drink from that belly button every day and feel blessed from that. And then I walk further and I pick my medicines. I have the advantage of picking the Labrador teas and the cranberries and the little white and the mushkikis and all the other things. And Creator gives us everything we need, regardless where we are. You look around, I don't know your land, so I won't be able to find your medicines, but I know my land and everything I need is right there. I just need to know what to look for, because the land provides. And I'm acknowledging that that land is there for me and for you, and will give us everything we need if we just look for it and acknowledge it and thank her, or whatever it is you believe in, that we have what we have because of this earth. So miigwech. So you don't have to come out with me, it's okay. The land acknowledges is more about the words, but the tobacco. You're probably wondering, I don't know, are you guys, should I talk about why I'm putting tobacco out, or should I just give up the mic here? Okay, so I thank James for this tobacco, miigwech. So tobacco is one of our 4 sacred medicines. And this is our gift. Whenever we pray or whenever we are asked of something, we always offer tobacco. We give it with our left hand and receive it from the left hand because that's closest to our heart. So when I bring this tobacco out, it is putting all of our good intentions and our connections to each other and acknowledging that we're going to have some time together this weekend, and hopefully a joyous time where we can meet new people and develop new friendships and bonds. And I'm going to ask Creator to just bless us today. And I'm also going to thank the Thunderbirds. Like I said earlier, the Thunderbird, that's my spirit animal, so they are my relations. And whenever they come by, I need to put tobacco out. So the tobacco is for all of this and for those Thunderbirds that are coming through. And what I'm going to do is I will open up the little tie and I'll just sprinkle it in the water. And then I'll take this home and probably tie it to a tree, unless, James, you want to tie it to a tree. I know people are kind of weirded out around certain areas about tying stuff to trees. But okay, so I'm just going to go put it out in the water. You can come if you want, or you can just hang out here because it looks like she's going to pour.